Okay, beautiful. So again, my name is Simon Casares. I'm the team leader and broker for KW South Bay's Torrance office. So I want to welcome you to today's contract class. So today we're going to be talking about the agent visual inspections and disclosure forms. Now, the importance of this documentation is one of the elements to be more efficient and also be very transparent when it comes to the actual transaction. And the agent visual inspection report is done by both buyer's agent and listing agent. Okay, so the transparency is when you're doing your client's due diligence period, you know, the buyer and also the seller have to acknowledge the agent visual inspection. So let's talk about what is the visual inspection, or better known as the AVIT. Okay, so let's dive right into it. All right. Why isn't this not applying? Here we go. Okay, so back in 1985, the Austin and Strandberger listed a broker has a duty to buyer to disclose what listing broker should have known. Okay, and part of the element of this agreement is what's called the factual visual netting on a hillside. As an example, was indicated of a slide movement in unstable, triggering a duty to disclose. So basically, you know, there was a lawsuit back in 1985 regarding the buyer and the seller, and that the buyer, Estensens, stated the fact that, you know, that the listing agent had a right and a responsibility to disclose that the property was on a hillside and that there was instability when it came to the property. This is what caused the ultimate lawsuit, and ultimately what started the AVIT, or better known as the agent visual inspection disclosure. Now, most of you should know that, you know, part of the initial process that a seller must disclose any material facts regarding the property, all right? That is the number one thing. If the seller is aware of any material facts about the property, meaning if they know that there's a leak in the roof, they must disclose. If they know that the plumbing has backup issues every month, they must disclose. If they know that their neighbor has a nuisance, every Saturday they have a band that plays in the garage and they play all the way till 10, 11, 12 o'clock, that is considered material fact. If the seller knows that they have an adjacent driveway, and sometimes the neighboring neighbor parks on the owner's property, then they must disclose material fact. Now, part of the AVIT is also what we consider visual, okay? It doesn't mean that you're gonna wear a hard hat, wear your utility belt, be jumping on a ladder and physically go on top of the roof to determine the integrity of the roof, or crawl under the crawl space and determine if there's any foundation or plumbing issue. That is not our job. That is not our responsibility. Our job and our responsibility is known material facts about the property, but more so to identify visual inspections, what they see regarding the property, okay? Now, as you can see the diagram here, you can see that the house is on the edge of a cliff, right? And it's already teeter-totting, right? Basically, at any given time, the structure itself will either collapse and fall, right? And again, this is an illustration of the potential to determine what is considered material fact. Well, if you wanted to Google the Austin and Strandberger case, you can Google that and it'll provide you detail by detail of exactly what transpired that ultimately caused this to be a lawsuit, but also the initiative for the California Association of Realtors to take the initiative to provide these known factual disclosures, which is our agent visual inspections. Now, the duties to inspect and disclose. So the broker's duty to inspect and disclose no required form of disclosure. It is the duty of the real estate broker or salesperson to a prospecting purchaser of a residential real property, comparisons of 1 to 4 dwellings. So this only, the avid is only for single family residents, duplex, triplex, and fourplex manufactured homes, okay? Anything else is not required to do an avid, okay? So I want to stress and emphasize the importance of this agent visual inspection to conduct a reasonable and competent and diligent visual inspection of the property, offer for sale, and to disclose to the buyer all facts materially affecting the value or desirability of the property that an investigation would reveal. So basically what it states here, that as professional realtors that we are, one of our duties and our responsibility is to do a competent, diligent, visual inspection of the property. When you go on a listing appointment, you're immediately looking and identifying how the property looks, right? Is the house cluttered? Does the house look dated? Does the house look like it needs some repairs? You know, what's the overall condition of the property? Because that's going to be part of your responsibility. It says that on the avid, and it clearly says that you as a responsible professional realtor, your duties is to inspect and to determine a visual, okay? Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's not your job to go on top of the roof, crawl under the crawl space, start moving furniture. No, your job is just to do a circle and a visual inspection, okay? You are a real estate salesperson, and your job is to sell property. Your job is not to determine, you know, what's causing that issue, right? If it's a leak, okay, our job is just to identify, I see, you know, a part of the ceiling that is stained, that appears to be moisture. But we're not going to go and determine, well, based on that, I believe that the roof is leaking, and it looks like it's leaking from the west wing of the roof. That is not what that's not what our job is, okay? Let's go on to the next slide. So part of the avid is also what we call the transfer disclosure statement, okay? Better known as the TDS. So the TDS is one of the most important documents that ultimately allows transparency, excuse me, regarding the overall condition of the property. This is a requirement under the California Civil Code 1102 that states the fact that the seller must disclose any concerns regarding the overall condition and material facts regarding the property. If we go back to the original slide here, I don't know why I'm having so much issues here. I apologize. Let me see here. Okay, so let's see why it's doing and separating this. Here we go. That's doing it again. Okay, so I'm sorry. So going back to the duties and disclosure, part of the responsibility is, again, the job of the broker and the salesperson to the prospective buyer, right, is a reasonable, competent, and diligent visual inspection of the property offered for sale, and to disclose to the buyer, here's the key: all facts materially affecting the value and or the desirability. Okay, and I want you to take this into heart and consideration, because if you ever have to testify in the court of law, if you have an attorney dissecting this case, your number one responsibility is to disclose anything pertinent to the condition of the property. Anything that was said to you, anything that you saw, or anything that was put in writing by the consumer, meaning the seller. And our job and our responsibility is to provide this null material. Now, no one on this call wants to ever be in a lawsuit because of a non-disclosure situation. And guess what? Buyers will ultimately sue sellers and will drag real estate professionals or real estate agents into a litigation, because they always say, well, the seller knew, the listing agent must have known as well. You never want to put yourself in that predicament, in that position, and be cornered that you would have known about it and you failed to disclose. Because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, not only are you jeopardizing yourself, you're jeopardizing your real estate license, and you're also jeopardizing your real estate company as well. And they're going to be dragged into a potential lawsuit if they can prove the fact that the agent had pertinent evidence and prove that they failed to disclose to the consumer. They always are going to look at the consumer as the victim in every case, not the seller. Now, there's pros and cons when it comes to this, but I want you to understand your role, your responsibility, and ultimately what is truth and what is false, but more so, any and all factual information must be disclosed to the end user, the buyer. It is your responsibility. It is your seller's responsibility, and it's your duty to divulge this information to the seller and explain to the seller the pros and cons. Because if you fail to tell the seller can now come back and countersue you as the professional, because now they can say, well, my real estate agent was not competent and was diligent in her professional position. That is not a good position to be, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to be crystal clear, because there is loopholes when it comes to your duties and responsibility, and more so the disclosure position that we must held to high standards in order to be able to deviate and ultimately squash a potential claim that someone is trying to put a case on us, okay? So there's two parts to this: the part of reasonable, competent, and diligent visual inspection, and provide the consumer with all facts materially affecting the value and also the desirability of the property, okay? So I want to make sure that we're all in unison and we're all on the same page with this, because this is a very important paragraph when it comes to our position. Because again, no one wants to get sued, not the seller, not the buyer, and more so not the real estate agents, okay? So this is the way you protect yourself, is disclose, disclose, disclose. All right, so going back. So the transfer form created by legislation and requires the seller to complete section 1 and 2 of the transfer disclosure statement. And then part 3, the listing agent to complete section 3 of that TDS. And then the cooperating buyer's agent to complete section 4 of the transfer disclosure. So part 1, which is the first page of the real estate transfer disclosure, is filled out and only filled out by the seller. do not, and I repeat, do not fill this out for your clients. If they ask you, well, Simon, or ask you, you know, please help me fill this out, do not do this, okay? Do not. The minute that you input any of your information, you draft this and start putting all the information, then you're liable. And ultimately, you can get sanctioned, and ultimately also they can restrict your real estate license if they find a case against you, because this form under Civil Code 1102 states otherwise, that the seller is responsible to fill out this information. I want to be, again, very clear. This is not your role and responsibility to fill out page 1 and page 2 of the transfer disclosure. Okay, this is a seller's disclosure. The seller is responsible. The seller must provide no material facts. If the homeowner has lived in the property 20, 25, or 30 years, they're going to know a lot more than what you know about the property. You only know the outer layer of the property. They may know the internal, right? They know that 10 years ago, they had to replace the sewer, okay? They know that 15 years ago, they had to replace all the plumbing. They know that 7 years ago, they replaced the roof. They know that 6 months ago, they replaced all the toilets. They know that, you know, 3 years ago, all of the floor was redone because of water damage. You would not know all this, and it's very, very important that the seller disclose any and all material facts that can ultimately cause a potential liability from the buyer suing the seller and the listing agent. So again, I want to caution you on your position.
If we notice something that the seller has not disclosed in 1 and 2, are we supposed to, you know, let them know?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
If we see something that the seller has not disclosed or may or may not have disclosed in section 1 and 2, are we to let the seller know of anything that we notice before they complete their sections?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. Your responsibility is to provide, obviously, the knowledge and expertise, right? If you are aware or you happen to get some information, and that information may be from a neighbor. The neighbor may come to you and say, hey, who are you? Well, I'm the agent representing the seller of the home here. I'm selling the property. Oh, by the way, did you know that X, Y, and Z? I says, no, I was not aware of it. I would say, does the seller know about this? No, we've never had an opportunity to speak with the seller. This is why I'm reaching out to you. Now that is considered material direct conversation. Now, we don't know the validity of it until we respond back and speak with the seller. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, were you aware that your neighbor, Mr. Smith, indicated about the encroachment, or, you know, the loud animal or dogs in the backyard, or music? Well, you know what? We hardly are at the house. We don't spend much time here. We have a second home that we spend most of our time. And the seller may not have known that, but this is, again, material facts that may jeopardize your position, because if the buyer buys the property, was not aware, was never disclosed, and they come back, well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you were aware that, you know, the next door neighbor plays loud music. Were you aware that they have a dog that barks, you know, 24/7? Well, if someone brought it to your attention, then it is our responsibility for us to investigate and ultimately have the seller do their research and find out, oh gosh, I didn't know that. But yeah, we're going to have to disclose that, because that, again, is considered a material fact. So to answer your question, yes, it's your responsibility. All right, let's continue. Okay, so the agent visual inspection. So again, the transfer disclosure, the SPQ, better known as the seller questionnaire, right, coincides with the TDS, the AVID, and the SPQ. So the agent visual inspection disclosure, which is now part of the California Civil Code section 2079, says the following. This is considered a supplement to the TDS, which is what we consider the agent visual inspection, the AVID. The TDS includes optional paragraphs in section 3 and section 4 to add the AVID form from room by room, agent's responsibility. And I'm going to share with you the TDS after the presentation, and I'm going to explain to you that part 3 of the transfer disclosure allows you to check the box if there is an AVID being included as part of the responsibility. Now, this information, is California law requires us as professional real estate agents to do a reasonable inspection regarding the desirability and the value of the property to determine if there is any concerns. At the end of the day, you don't want this to fall upon you, and now they're pointing fingers at you because we failed to provide a known material facts. Again, at the end of the day, think about when you got your real estate license, right? When you got your real estate license, everyone was talking about it's all about locations, 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 right? That's what we heard when we were going and getting our real estate. Prime area ultimately is the more desirable areas to buy, right? Now you're in real estate, you know that that's one of the priorities. But now that you're heavily involved with contracts, we sometimes have to practice a little bit of law. I'm not saying that you are giving any legal advice or any tax advice, but what I'm saying is the contracts are the contracts, and these contracts are here to protect everyone, the consumer, the buyer, the seller, and more so the real estate professionals, and that's the buyer's agent and also the listing agent. So these contracts are here as a benefit for us. 15, 20 years ago, we didn't utilize the agent visual inspection, and now this is part of the program, part of the process. And ultimately, the more you can provide evidence of any material facts regarding the property, the better in likelihood that there will not be a claim, because now we can position ourselves as professionals. If you're in a litigation or mediation or arbitration, then ultimately you're going to stand your ground and says, look, we provided the consumer, the buyer, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, with an agent visual inspection. And part of my inspection was I noted that there was a certain odor, a certain stain, a certain crack. Now, we are not professionals. That is not my expertise. I just noted what I visually saw. So when the court or anyone hears that, you're not going to put yourself in a liability, but you're putting yourself in a position that I acknowledged, I saw it, I disclosed it on my report, which is the agent visual report, and then that was also provided to the consumer. So it protects you from a buyer coming back to sue you because of a material fact that they believe that you're in cahoots with the seller, because that's the first thing. If you're the listing agent, you must have known about this issue, and shame on you, listing agent, for not providing this material fact. So I do not want to be in that position. Neither should you. Okay, so I want you to understand the importance of all the documents that we have. These documents are one of the most important documents in the initial process. The TDS, which is the transfer disclosure statement, the AVID, which is the agent visual inspection disclosure, and also the SPQ, which is the seller questionnaire. These are forms that must be provided as part of the disclosures to the consumer, so that way the consumer can make a determination if they want to continue with the process, should they get additional inspection on the property, and make a determination if they want to move forward or not. Now, I also want to stress the fact that all property are sold in its as-is condition. It clearly states on the purchase agreement, right? You see it, as is condition, meaning the property is sold in its current condition. And the seller does not have to do any, and I repeat, any repairs, any replacements, any credit, or any price reduction. The seller can say no to all that. You're buying this property as is. Take it or leave it. And that's the seller's position. And the seller has every right to do so. The question here is the avenue of what we call the give and take, right? You got to give a little in order for this to continue. Because at the end of the day, what is your number one goal? Your number one goal is to close this deal. That's your goal, is to push the buyer, push the seller to ultimately close the deal. Now, can we force anyone to do anything? Can I put a gun or threaten the buyer, threaten the seller? You must do this otherwise. The answer is no. No, you can't. But what you can do is guide them through the initial process and explain how all this works. Remember, you are the professional. It is your job, your duty to be able to navigate this, because at the end, as I stated earlier, if you are not doing your responsibility, then the buyer or the seller can come back and say, well, my agent was incompetent enough to understand, and that's why we're in this mess. And that's why I'm going after my agent and the agent's company, because I've been damaged.
Excuse me, Simon, what time are we to give this transfer disclosure statement? Is it before an offer is accepted, or?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I'm going to give you the black and white, and I'm also going to give you the spirit of the contract, okay? The black and white defines exactly what the contract, if you read the contract is going to tell you do X, Y, and Z, right? But there's also what we call the spirit of the contract, meaning the bending of this contract. Just because the contract says the following doesn't mean it's going to go in that direction. No. And I've seen numerous transactions, and I've been involved in mediations. I've been involved in arbitrations. I've been sued. I've been dealing with attorneys, and I understand the dynamics that sometimes what appears to be the black and white of a contract doesn't necessarily go that way, ladies and gentlemen. So in essence, you know, when is the right avenue and the right opportunity to provide these disclosures to the consumer? So the answer to it is the black and white is as soon as practical. As soon as practical, okay? So what I mean by as soon as practical is you're the listing agent, right? You go in, you list the property, congratulations, you walk out with the listing agreement. Now, a lot of real estate agents don't even start the actual disclosures until they're in escrow. And then they're still not done with the seller disclosures until their offer has been accepted, executed, and now you're open escrow. And now barely the listing agent is doing the seller disclosures. Now, that has good and bad to it, okay? And a lot of agents go in that parameter and ultimately get away with it with no problems and no issues, okay? But in essence, These disclosures, the agent visual and the transfer disclosures and the seller questionnaire, the SPQ forms, must be provided to the consumer upon request, okay? Meaning that if a buyer and a buyer's agent is asking for these disclosures before even submitting an offer, you must provide these disclosures, okay? Now, I know it sounds a little bit backwards, okay? Well, why would I provide these disclosures to a buyer that has not submitted an offer? Well, because the contract says the following. The contract says that, you know, you can provide these disclosures prior to any offers coming in. So in essence, as a listing agent, you should have already completed these disclosures and provide these disclosures upon request from anyone asking information regarding the property. It's very clear cut. It's black and white. Now, that traditionally doesn't happen. We traditionally don't see that happen. And most agents, because they do not understand the contracts, say, I am not going to provide you with the disclosures until you get an offer sent and accepted and we open escrow. Then I'll provide you with the disclosure, okay? But in essence, that's not the way it's done, okay? That is not the way it's done. The way it's done is anyone asking for, you know, disclosures to determine if they're going to submit an offer, then we must provide that even if it's before they even submit an offer, okay? So that's what we consider the black and white of the contract. Now, usually it doesn't happen that way, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't happen that way. Usually what we see a lot is submit the offer, your offer gets accepted, congratulations, we open escrow. Once the buyer deposits their deposit into escrow, then we start the initial process. The buyer, within 7 days, will get the disclosures, okay? The seller has up to 7 days to provide these disclosures, okay, as part of the initial process. But in essence, also the contracts stipulate that these disclosures upon request should also be provided. So meaning if a buyer asks for a copy of any of these disclosures, transfer, TDS, transfer disclosures, SPQ, or the listing agent's AVID, then you must provide that as part of the process. Interesting stuff, right? Very interesting. So again, going back to answering your question, is if you are the listing agent, you should have these forms completed immediately. You don't want to be that agent that waits at the last minute because the contract defines your position. If you fail to provide these disclosures in a timely manner, then as soon as you submit these disclosures to the buyer has an additional 5 days to review it. And then the buyer also has 5 additional days to release that as a condition. So in essence, guys, if you are not providing this, now you're putting yourself and your client in a liability position. And that is not bueno, that is not good. Because now if the buyer is supposed to release physical inspections, right? 17 days to release inspections, but the seller failed to provide any and all of these disclosures, and they realize, oh my gosh, we failed to provide this disclosure to the buyer, and it's on the 14th day, then automatically the buyer has 5 additional days to release that as a condition. And there's nothing that the seller can do. You cannot send a notice to perform and say, well, it's 17 days, you got to release that. No, on the contrary, you, the seller, failed. You, the listing agent, failed to provide me with all disclosures, seller disclosures. The contract says buyer has an additional 5 days. And on top of that, the buyer also can cancel if the buyer doesn't feel satisfied with the condition of these reports. Okay, so I caution you, and I want you to understand the importance of timelines. These are one of many disclosures that have timelines, okay? Otherwise, you are putting yourself in a very vulnerable position that may jeopardize the position, and now someone is going to be pointing fingers, and guess who they want to point fingers? Real estate professionals, okay? So keep that in mind. All right, let's continue. All right, why isn't this not working? All right, so the transfer disclosure we talked about already. I think it went up, so go back to 5. We talked about the agent visual. Okay, so the Avid here. So the Avid page 1 identifies the actions that the agents will not do. No offsite, no public records, no common areas, roof or attics, no accessible areas, chimneys behind, locked doors, under rugs, and all that. That is not the responsibility, folks. That is not your job, okay? You're not going to be moving furniture. You're not going to be crawling inside the attic or going underneath the house. You're not going to jump on top of the roof and say, well, you know what, based on my visual, it looks like that side of the roof may need to be replaced, okay? No, that is not our job. That's not our position, okay? Our job is not to do any offsite investigations. Our job is not to do any public records. Our job is not to do any common areas such as roof or attics. Our job is not to go in and crawl spaces, including chimneys. Our job is not to, look behind locked doors or under the rugs or move any type of furniture, okay? Because it puts buyers on notice of buyers' own duties, okay? So in essence, it's considered a visual inspection. Visual, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. You walk the house, you see that there is a sofa, you see that there's a television, okay? Our job is not to manipulate or move anything and determine, okay, what's behind the television? What's behind the sofa? What's underneath the sofa, okay? Now, you're not gonna do any of that stuff. It's considered just a visual inspection, ladies and gentlemen. Part 2 of the Avid goes into Avid to make disclosures following inspections, right? All paragraphs should have a marking, even if it is not part of the property. You want to put an NA on it, okay? So if the property, if you look at the diagram on the right side, living room, dining room, kitchen, other rooms, hall, stairs, bedroom 1, bedroom 2, bedroom 3, bathroom 1, bathroom 2, bathroom 3, other rooms, okay? If it does not apply to it, do not leave it blank, okay? So if the house only has a 2-bedroom, then you know that the sample agent visual inspection has 3, and you're gonna put on the 3rd one, you're gonna put an NA, does not apply. Leave something on there instead of leaving it blank. Now, on the very top of the form, it says the property address, and it has the date, and it says if this property is a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, this is for unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4. So if the property has more than one, if it's a single family residence, you do 1 Avid. If it's a duplex, you're gonna do 2 Avids. If it's a triplex, you're gonna do 3 Avids. If it's a fourplex, then you're gonna do a 4 Avids. If it's 5 units or greater, guess what? It does not apply. You don't have to do an Avid. There's no need. It's not required. So now when you do 5 units, it's considered a commercial transaction. So part of the responsibility is that the agent does not have to do an avid. Okay, so you don't have to. Only single family, townhomes, condominiums, mobile homes, duplex, triplex, and fourplex. That's it. Do you have to do an avid for land? No. Okay, because land doesn't have living rooms, dining rooms, kitchens. Okay, so you don't have to do an avid. Only for SFRs, duplex, triplex, fourplex, manufactured homes, mobile homes, and also townhomes and condominiums. That's all you have to do. Now, if you look at the sample on the right side, right, it says also who performed the inspection, which was the real estate firm, Keller Williams, right? The inspection date, what date and time? Well, the inspection was done today, July 11th, and we're doing the inspection right now at 14:43 or 2 o'clock, 2:43 in the afternoon. I'm just using military as an example. What's the weather condition? Okay, was it, foggy? Was it cloudy? Was it rainy? Was it sunny? Was it clear? Why is that important? Well, because again, if this ever gets dissected, right, they want to know, and an attorney is going to dissect this in every shape, way, and form. They're going to see, well, when and why was this inspection, when was this inspection done? What was the condition? Was it, sunny out there? Was there a lot of lighting? Do you think that maybe because it was a little in the afternoon, was dark or muggy or rainy, you couldn't really visually see it? And they're going to try to catch you on a response, right? That can alter your position and discredit you and find you at fault. So this is why documentation, ladies and gentlemen, is very, very important. Documentation is crucial because you're not going to remember all the facts regarding the property, right? But you can always go back and reference your position and realize, oh, okay, I remember back in January 11th of 2022 at approximately 2:43, I did the inspection. Based on my report, it says that the weather condition at the time was sunny, okay? Now you can ultimately have a fresh memory of exactly what transpired and why you indicated what you indicated on this form, okay? So part of it is, even if an NA only 2 bedrooms, indicate nothing noted if no defects detected, okay? So another thing, if you are going through the living room and you notice nothing to report, do not leave it blank. Put something on these documents, okay? Indicate nothing noted, okay? When you're looking at the living room, everything looks fine. I don't see anything, nothing noted. Okay, so put that. Dining room, again, nothing noted. Kitchen, I don't see anything that I need to put, so I'm going to put nothing noted. Put something on there, okay? And again, you're going to put an NA if it does not pertain or doesn't have the additional bedrooms or bathrooms. Otherwise, please do not leave it blank. Fill in the blanks as much as possible because, again, once this goes into a potential complaint or lawsuit, they're going to dissect these forms and they're going to see every element of what you put, okay? So I caution you on that. All right, part 3 of the AVID, other views or known conditions, okay? Agent has a duty to reveal any known material facts. We explained that, right? Material facts or defects regarding the property. Anything that you see, anything that you hear, anything that you smell, right? If you see something, you're going to disclose. If you hear something, you're going to disclose. If you sense something or smell something, you're going to disclose. How many times have you been in a property that you smell some type of gas, right? I've been in numerous properties where I smell a little leak of a gas coming out. And I'm going to note it and I'm going to explain that because, again, my responsibility is the overall condition of the property, the overall condition of the property. One second. Overall condition. So considered non-visual issues, odors, right? Near manufacturing facilities or animal farms. You know, for many, many years, I used to live in the city of Chino Hills. Okay, and if you know Chino Hills, it's next to Chino and it's next to Ontario. And back in the early 2000s and even in the 90s, we had a lot of dairies out there in Ontario. So early in the morning, guess what? I would smell cows, you know, and it was strong. And you can definitely identify, even though it was not near my, it was not on my city, but it was, you know, 4 or 5 miles and I still would have that sense of odor. So guess what I would do if I was selling my property or a property in that particular city? I would note, you know, hey, you know, there is a consideration of odor here. And usually this odor happens to be early in the morning, you know, and I would disclose that because, again, I do not want that buyer to go in there and say, my gosh, I would have not bought this property if I'd known they had this very awful smell. I don't want to buy a property in this every single day. And if the agent would have disclosed that to me or the seller, I would have immediately not bought this property. Again, consideration, right? But ultimately, your responsibility to absorb and know any material facts regarding the property. So, okay. Any questions so far? All right, so let's get into really how.
Hi, Simon, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Simon. Thank you today. Two questions about Avid. One of them is, you know, of course, non-Keller Williams agents, but, you know, lots of times I'll get an Avid back, and I'd like to know what the criteria is for what people are writing. So is it only for defects? Or because sometimes I'll get one with no defects and they'll just be pointing out, you know, granite counters, blah, 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 you know, marble floors, wood, whatever, things like that. I mean, what is your comment about that?
Very good question. This leads to the next slide here. So this is where we explain how to properly disclose and put it in writing. Remember, you are not a professional and your job is not to know every element of that. So here on the next slide.
Wait, I'm not saying though about a defect. I'm saying just plainly stating like kitchen counters are granite. They're not, or whatever they're saying, it's not a defect or something. It's just they're making like observations, like ceiling fans, stuff like that. Is that
what?
Is that something you write on an Avid?
You could. Yeah, especially if the property or the item, such as a ceiling fan, may be a very expensive one, right? But the Avid is for material facts, material issues, anything that may be, again, going back to the desirability of the property. Just because it has an expensive fan, you don't have to note that and disclose that. Oh yeah, it has a $10,000 ceiling fan, okay? No, that's not the whole purpose of the visual inspection. What the visual inspection is, anything, as you can see on this slide, the sink, the ceiling, and you guys, I don't know if you can see it, but the ceiling has some spotty yellow spots on it. That's what the Avid's all about. I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yes, I have one more question if I can. It was about your example of the if it goes to mitigation or there's a problem and you've written it's raining, you know, like whatever, there's an issue. Are you saying that if it's because you would be able to go back and say you couldn't see something, or does that help you if you're writing that? Like, I'm just saying, if you miss something, and are you saying that it's because of the weather or whatever it is you write, is that protecting yourself like that? Or that's kind of just...
Absolutely. As an example, Christine, and thank you for sharing. As an example, let's say that you see that there was a door there, right? And that door has a lock, right? It has a lock. Now, you know, part of your job as a real estate professional is to do what we call the avid, right? But if the seller does not give you access to that, we're not going to know what's behind that door, right? We're going to assume there must be a reason why. I don't know. Maybe they have some personal items in there that they don't want you to see. But you still do your avid, and then later when the buyer's doing their inspections, they're allowing the buyer. But by that time, everything is already out that they didn't want you to see as an agent. So part of your avid and your responsibility is you're going to note that at the time of inspection, you know, this particular door on the east wing of the property or adjacent to the living room was locked with a lock, and I was not able to visually look at the inside of that door. So if this ever comes back and now the buyer wants to sue because what was on the other side, damage, water damage, issues, foundation, whatever the case may be, that was now a concern in a material fact because you were not able to do your avid or see on the other side. You can reference yourself on the avid and said, you know, at the time, you know, if there's ever a litigation, you know, I didn't have access to it because it was locked. And that clears you because no one is going to fault you, Christine, in your responsibility that you have to go in there. It was locked at the time. I didn't have access to it. That's it. That's simple. You can't say, well, the seller refused to allow me in it, or the seller did not give me access to it. That's here or there. The seller doesn't have to allow you anywhere. Remember, your job and your job only is to sell property. Anything that pertains to the property from the seller, what you hear or what you see, then you disclose it. But if you don't know what's on the other side of that door, by all means, then it's not your fault. But you're going to document that and protect yourself because 5, 6, maybe a year later, when the buyer wants to sue you and sue the seller, you're going to go back and reference your form and say, you know, at the time, that's why you put the date, you put the time, the condition, the weather, and ultimately why you were not able to go inside that door. It was locked. That's it. That's simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't go deep into it because it's going to drive you bananas. Okay. I hope that kind of answers your question, Christine. All right. So let's continue. So identify what is visual. Do not speculate on cause, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. You're not in the speculation. Your job is not to speculate what the issue is. That's not your job. Are you a plumber? No. Are you an electrician? No. Are you a roofer? No. Do you have contract expertise and knowledge about foundation structure? No. Plumbing? No. Chimneys? No. So do not speculate. Even though you may think you know, do not put yourself in that position because I can tell you from personal experience, they're going to dissect it and they're going to say to you, well, tell me what's your expertise on the plumbing? Well, I'm not a plumber. Then why would you write what you wrote? Why would you indicate what you indicate? Now you're going to put yourself in a very liable potential liability scenario that you just don't want to be, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so here's a little bit of diagrams on the right way and the wrong way. Okay, so look at the scene to your right, and you know here's the right way and the wrong way to disclose this. Okay, so the yes and no. So the greenish black discoloration in the kitchen sink. Okay, or let me see, mold of the, no, that's not it, stain on living room, or water stain in living room caused by leaky upper level, no, that's not it. Stain on living room ceiling near area, okay? So if you look at the yes and no, you know, the proper way is greenish black discoloration in kitchen sink. okay? Or mold of the X, Y, and Z variety in the kitchen. How do we know if it's mold? Are you an expert? Did you test it? Did you get chemicals to determine that it is mold? The answer is no. Then why would you speculate, ladies and gentlemen, that it is mold? It may look like mold, right? But to me, it just looks like a dirty mechanic sink. That mechanics that are constantly in oil and grease are the ones washing their hands here. But we're not going to speculate. We're only going to identify what we see. Black discoloration in the kitchen sink. That's it. Okay. The next one. Look at the diagram just below. Now, the wrong way to write this is water stain in living room caused by leaky upper level window or bathroom. How do we know that the leak is coming from the upper level? How do we know that it's the window or the bathtub that is leaking this? That is not our job. It's not our job to speculate, okay? All you have to do is stain on living room, ceiling near dining area. That's it. Don't add to it. Do not speculate. The more you speculate, the more you're going to get yourself into liability. Okay? I wouldn't even go as deep in that. I would just say stain in the living room. That's it. It's quite obvious. And, you know, to me, as soon as I walk into the living room, I'm going to be able to see this. Your job is not to speculate and determine where that water is coming from. You probably know that if there is a bathroom upstairs or a sink, that it's probably coming from that area. But we're not going to put that because now you're putting yourself in liability. Okay. All right, let's go to the next example. We have uneven floor near entry to bedroom. All right, that's the proper way of doing it. Instead of saying crack in second bedroom near baseboard. Okay, well, I understand that it's cracked. Okay. Wait a minute, my apologies. My apologies, I'm looking at the wrong one. Crack on near bedroom baseboard. Yeah. Okay, so the proper way is uneven floor near entrance to a bedroom, okay? That's really what it is. It's uneven, all right? We cannot speculate. We know that it's cracked, but we don't know what the reason for the crack. Maybe it's just an old wood. Maybe it's water. Maybe, you know, this wood before it even was put into the house was sitting out in the sun and rain for many, many years, and it really tarnished. But we don't know that. We cannot speculate that. And it's not our job and our responsibilities to know that. Our only responsibility is, hey, look, it looks uneven, and that's it. That's what I see. All right, let's look at the bottom one. And the wrong way is large or small structure or cosmetic crack caused by earthquake or bad paint job. That's pretty funny, right? Large, structural. How do we know if this is even structural? How do we know that this was done by an earthquake, right? Maybe it was some big guy like myself just randomly walked into the wall and cracked the heck out of the wall. We don't know that. But the proper way of disclosing that, there's a 15-degree slope floor inactive, excuse me, my bad.
Crack in second bedroom near baseboard.
Yeah, why am I getting myself confused here? So the right way of is the 15-degree slope floor indicating of a ship of slab. Okay, so that's the wrong way. My apologies. Okay, the right way of indicating this is the large or small. Why this doesn't make any sense to me.
The crack in the second bedroom near the baseboard is the right way for the crack above the, above the.
Yeah, okay, so that's where I'm a little confused. Got it. So
maybe it starts at the baseboard and goes all the way up to the ceiling. That's probably right.
I'm getting myself
15-degree
confused
slope
here.
floor is the wrong way to describe the floor of a
Yeah,
balloon.
so the crack in the second bedroom near the baseboard. So that's the proper way to identify this area. So this is this. I thought this was this, but in essence, this is referring to this. Okay, so this is the improper way of disclosing large or small structural cosmetic crack caused by earthquake or bad paint job. I was just a little confused. I don't know why it doesn't make any sense, but you get the picture here, right? All right, let's continue. All right, so the risk management and tip: agent completes form the transfer disclosure and or the AVIT for brokerage company. There's almost always some defects or deficiency in a property. Pause before selecting the no noted deficiency box. Okay, on the transfer disclosure, ladies and gentlemen, it'll say that, you know, do you notice anything? Are you indicating it on the AVIT, or you don't see any issues with the property? Now, I'm going to tell you from personal experience, please, please, please do not check, nothing to report on the transfer disclosure, okay? Always indicate something on there. Trust me when I say this, it's better to disclose the little thing than say nothing, because then it shows that you didn't even take the lack of responsibility to, you know, do your job. Wow, she must have just run by the property, looked at the home, and not did a thorough visual inspection. Okay, put something on there. Trust me when I say this, it'll definitely give you peace of mind, and also the stress and frustration if you ever get into a potential complaint or lawsuit. The advantages of using the AVIT: establish a compliance with civil code. Obviously, we talked a little bit about the civil codes. If claims is made against the broker, the AVIT may refresh the agent's memory of the events. As I said, you know, the importance. You cannot remember what you did yesterday or the day before, but when you did document on these forms, you can always go back and reference and say, oh yeah, that jogs my memory. I remember exactly. I remember it was a cold early morning. It was raining, and this is what I saw. Because you will be able to go back to your documentation. Any lawsuits may help establish agent credibility. Again, the very importance, okay? How credible are you? Did you do a thorough visual inspection? Did you do everything to your best of your ability? And did you protect yourself, your brokerage, and also your sellers? Okay, because they're also relying on your expertise. And the seller can come back and countersue you as well, because they're going to blame and point fingers at you and says, well, Simon should have told me. Simon should have known better. Simon was the one that is the expert in knowledge of the process and transactions and paperwork. Simon should have told me that I needed to disclose that, and Simon failed to disclose that. So shame on Simon for not having the competence to provide me with the understanding, you know. And again, worst case scenario, right? We never want to ever be in a claim or lawsuits, but you got to prepare for the worst on every transaction that you're in and close. All right. And then last but not least, you know, you can go through the California Association of Realtors, agent visual inspections and disclosures. And there's a lot of questions and answers. So you want to get a little bit more information on some of the questions and answers regarding that. Let me see if I can really pull it up real quick. I doubt that it's going to allow me to do that. Let's go here. Here we are. So here's an example, team, that you can pull. If you want a copy of this quick guide, please send me an email, and I'll be more than happy to send you this quick guide, agent visual inspections. I really truly believe in these forms, because these are straight from the California associations. These are straight from the attorneys that draft all these forms for us. So it just provides you with understanding. It's the law agent's duty to inspect and disclose, right? Sale of residential properties from 1 to 4 units. Who, broker representing buyers and sellers, what, must conduct reasonable, competent, diligent visual inspection right here. It's in black and white and it's in your face consistently. So that way you do the right thing every time. So if you want a copy of this, please send me an email. It's simoncasades@kaw.com, and I'll be more than happy to send you this form, okay? Forms TDS and ABIT, the advantages of an ABIT. And again, start building your arsenal of tools, okay? Most of you know that in the past I was in law enforcement, and I remember doing a lot of reports, tons of reports. And then I would reference, and I had a 3-ring binder, and all the reports and every type of scenario, I would use that as reference if I had a theft, if I had a robbery, if I had domestic. And then I would go back and just kind of look at the elements of that report and use it. The names changed, the dates changed, some of the narrative changes, but the content stays the same. So again, part of your arsenal in your job is to be very diligent, right? But also have all these pamphlets and information to help you, guide you, and have a better understanding of your position. Okay. So with that being said, I just want to share one more thing, and then I should be done. So I can show you the TDS. Okay. All right, what happened here? Thanks again for being patient. I'm almost done. All right, here we are. Okay, team, so here's what we call the transfer disclosure. This is the Civil Code 1102, pertinent information, address, description, you know, and it goes into seller's information right here. Okay, is the seller living or occupying the property? If the answer is yes, then they put a check here, or if they are not, then they're going to put a check here. Then the property has the following items. What does the property have? So the property has an oven, does it have a microwave, dishwasher? So you go through the list of all this that your seller, and again, I have to emphasize, this is the seller's responsibility, not yours. Part 2 is also the seller's responsibility. Are you, seller, aware of any significant defects, malfunctions in any of the following? If it's yes, great, go through the motions. Are you, seller, aware of any of this? Okay, and then they're going to check off one by one. Okay, do not leave it blank. It's either answer it yes or answer it no. If you answer yes, or excuse me, if your sellers answer yes, then have your sellers write a quick little description on what the issue of the material facts is. All right. Then part 3, this is where the agent's responsibility here. This is where I want you to understand, agent, you want to, as a buyer's agent and as a seller's agent, you want to always include a visual inspection, ABIT, and never just check this right here. Agent knows no items for disclosure, okay? Even though that's the most convenient way, I'm telling you from personal experience, do not put that as agent does not have anything to disclose. Find something to disclose, okay? If that means putting a stain with your hand on the wall, then just do so for the fact that, you know, you have to. I'm kidding, okay? If it's a legitimate and there's really nothing to disclose, then obviously it has it there. But there's always going to be something that you can put as a disclosure, ladies and gentlemen. And I stress the fact, the importance of doing so, okay? And you can always note here and add additional information. If you represent the seller, you're going to go here. If you represent the buyer, then you're going to put the same information. So that's the transfer disclosure statement, okay? The next form that I want to also indicate is the ABIT. Okay, so just as a reference, this is the ABIT right here. The ABIT has, you know, the city. It goes into how many ABITs. Remember, single, triplex, single, duplex, triplex, and fourplex. You're going to put this as ABIT 1, 2, and 3, or ABC, whatever the case. You're going to put the company that you are with. and then you're going to go through it. And it really goes into California law does not require the agent to do the following. Areas that are not reasonably and normal accessibility, areas of off-site to the property. You don't do any public records or permits, ladies and gentlemen, or common areas of planned development or condom stocks and stuff of that nature. Your limitations, okay? There's limitations. Again, your job is not to start moving furniture and going underneath the house, any of that stuff. It's just to do a visual inspection. And then here, again, if it has a living room, then great. If it has a dining room, and if there's no dining room, then a simple NA, okay? That to me shows that there is no dining room, okay? If there's only only two bedrooms, and I'm gonna reference that as 1 and then 2, and then I'm gonna go number 3, NA as an example, okay? Any questions regarding that? Same with bathrooms. Okay, so that's the AVID. The last form that I want to also introduce you is the SPQ. Okay, the seller property questionnaire. This is again part of the disclosure process. This is again seller discloses. It's not for you to fill out, but it's for the seller. And there's a lot of information here. But here's an example. Seller, are you aware within the last 3 years any death of any occupant of the property upon the property? Meaning, has anyone died in the property? Okay. And if there has been a death on an occupant, then you must disclose. Now, my question to you, I'm going to test you. Within the last 3 years, the death of an occupant of the property upon the property, would you disclose that if there was a pet that passed away, let's say in the property? Is that considered part of the occupant? How many say yes and how many say no? How many don't know?
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's a very delicate situation. Not sure, right? Thank you, Richard, I'm sorry. So yeah, I mean, how many people treat pets as family members? I know I'm a pet lover. I love dogs, and I treated my pet as my child. So I would probably, because it's a very vague, because it doesn't really go into really pets as the death in the property. But I've had, pet cemeteries in my parents' home. I know for a fact that there's a couple of dogs that growing up we buried in the back of the house, and if my parents were to just sell their property, I would probably disclose that, because there's a lot of people that believe in superstitions. There was a movie called Pet Cemetery, right? So I would just be, in a proactive approach, and I would probably just disclose that, not any human beings have passed away, but I've had some animals that have passed away in the house, because even people may be a little superstitious about that. It's better to disclose that, because your number one ally who will probably tell your new neighbor is going to be your next door neighbor. Hey, by the way, do you know that there was 10 dogs that died in the house? What? Yeah, didn't the seller tell you? No. Okay, you don't want to be in that position. So ask the questions, speak with your sellers, and be very direct, And a lot of us probably don't know, and you can reference a lot of this stuff, but, pets are like family. Cats are like family as well. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, any questions? All right, so if there is no additional questions, let me pull out of here and stop sharing. All right, team. Well, again, if you have any additional questions, by all means, please reach out. And if you want a copy of any of the presentations or the Q&A, just send me an email. Okay? Appreciate you all. You guys are amazing. Go kill it. Go crush it. And let's go make some money. Thanks again, guys. Good to see you. Bye, Kathy.
Bye. Thanks, Simon.
Bye.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, Christine. Thanks for being. I missed you last week.
I know. I forgot what happened. I'm showing property or something. I capped. I got my award today.
Thanks, Simon.
Congratulations.
I know. Thank you
That's
so much.
awesome.
Dinner, family reunion. Me and you, a breakfast, lunch, whatever. Okay.
You got it. You got it. Looking forward to it.
See you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.